definitely welcome all. What I'm really excited to introduce is the Language Leaders AI Summit. This is really about us trying to learn together about AI, its impact on particularly language education. This is why I wanted to do this particular event. Was general education gets a lot of love, lots of other industries get a lot of love, but what about language education? I think we're a unique enough industry that we deserve some attention, and this idea of sharing benchmarks and learnings, I think, is a really important one. So let me introduce the panel. I'm going to be starting, and actually we're going to be going in effectively this order. But let me first of all introduce you to Ben Watley. Ben is the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Memrise. Memrise was actually founded in 2010, but it's grown to become the award-winning language learning system that we all know today, with over 80 million users. Ben's passionate about AI and has actually released, they actually released their AI-powered Membot 6 months before ChatGPT's public release in late 2022. And so Ben's really been at the forefront of this new wave of generative AI, and very much looking forward to learning from his experience. Next, we're going to be listening and learning from Dmytro Voloshyn. He's the Chief Technology Officer and the co-founder of Whately. I'm sure many of you will know Whately, and Demitro has really been responsible for this industry-leading AI development that it's been really pursuing, particularly over the last year. And over this last year, Whately's announced the introduction of an AI teacher assistant for its 40,000 strong tutor population. Whately has over 600 employees and over 60 nationalities, and has raised over $170 million since its inception. And so today we're going to learn about those AI experiments, and particularly AI in language education at scale. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Kantt. He's a graduate from Harvard University with a Master of Education. He is also the Director of Product at EBU Education, and he's really been concentrating on technology and innovation for many years. And in fact, he's spent over 15 years in the language education industry and started one of the very first online language schools, which continues to this day. And one of the other things you should know about him is that we actually co-authored a book called LangTech, a deep dive into online language education, its future, and a framework for success, which we published early last year. And so we're a bit of a partner in crime in the research that I'm going to be delivering a little bit later on today, and also the white paper that we'll eventually be sending you all. So thanks again for listening in. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Ben to start us off. And Ben, you're going to be talking about LLMs, but I'm just really excited to learn more about your experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to talk without any slides, actually. I'm just going to talk through kind of how I'm thinking about the use of AI, particularly in language learning, and what we kind of found out. So I guess I'm going to start with a little memory I have of a video that I saw back in probably 15 years ago when we founded Memrise. And it was of this Chinese-speaking guy who had learned the entire English dictionary. And he was showing off his talents, and you could tell him, like, page 273, second column, fourth word down, and he could trot off what it said. But he was completely unable to have an actual conversation in English. He'd just gone through and learned the facts. And it struck me that actually, there's a sort of continuum of language learning where that's at one extreme that we can all see as not a very useful way to have learned a language. But actually, historically, we probably skewed slightly too close to that in how we teach languages, and there's been too much learning about the language and too little practicing to use it effectively. And I think when you look back through history at different models of education, pretty much every educational philosophy, from Buddhist monks to Waldorf Steiner schools to sports psychology, has some kind of a model that is similar to the need to learn something in your conceptual mind and kind of form a conceptual understanding of something, and then bring it into your experience so that it can actually be useful to you. And I think it's true in language learning, but it's true in Buddhism, it's true in sports, it's true in pretty much any area of learning that we do. We have this conceptual mind that can grasp facts and ideas, but that's not useful until we've internalized it and actually practiced with it and made use of it. And that theme has been coming up sort of over and over again, kind of throughout history. Now, what fascinates me at the moment is that over the last 100 years, but particularly over the last 40 years, we've had this transformation in the availability of information. The internet put text everywhere, then it put videos everywhere. You can find rich media content explaining pretty much anything. The facts are available to you. The conceptual learning is available to anybody. And there's been I've tried to find a good, reliable statistic on this, but I think it's probably immeasurable. The scale of information that is now accessible by any of us compared to the information that was accessible 100 years ago, it's virtually an infinite increase. And yet, right now, only say 17% of Americans speak a second language. And most of those that do are doing it not because of greater access to information, but because they're living in a community where people speak another language. This huge increase in the availability of information has not transformed into people internalizing that into their lives, into their internal mental world. And so it's kind of we've at some point there was a blockage that stopped the transformation of people's minds through education was that they couldn't access the information. That's no longer the rate limiting step. We can access all the information. Now we've got this blockage in a different place, that is, people have to engage with it richly in order to internalize it and make use of it in their daily life and make use of it in their cognition minute by minute in how they think, in how they behave. So that is the bit that, in my mind, AI is giving us a step change in our ability to do. And I think that's what kind of excites me about it. That, you know, you've already on the one hand, we've seen how AI can be used to kind of replace Google search. It's a more intuitive search. It's another way of accessing information. It does undoubtedly also do that. But in my mind, that's a kind of surface level replacement. It's a useful tool, but it's not the total game changer. So the game changer comes when we think of, like, how do we actually internalize information? What is it that goes? And let's look at the example of language learning, though I think this is very applicable in other areas. What is it that allows us to go from knowing a bunch of words and phrases to being able to use them in a conversation, or knowing and being able to explain a grammar rule to being able to hear a conjugated form of a verb and the right meaning appear in our experience? Like, what is that change? And I think I take quite a kind of Stephen Krashen approach to this, that I think fundamentally the way that you make that jump is by processing target language input at just above your current level. Like, I think there's a lot of good evidence that that is the case. So if we take that as a starting point, historically, language education has been really focused on that explicit learning the vocabulary, learning what the words are, learning what they mean to translate them, learning the grammar rules, how to understand those. So how does AI help us to do this? Actually, I'm going to generalize a little bit more. So Stephen Krashen, who many of you will be familiar with, but I think writes really well about this and has thought about it well for a long time, has this idea of processing what he calls I+1 input just above your current level. But I think there's also another way of looking at that. That is, the way that our minds learn effectively is by forming expectations, testing those expectations, and then modifying our expectations. So it's by, if I want to try and express myself in a new language, then I can try saying something, I get the feedback of whether someone understood me or not, I modify it, I try again. That's the process by which I actually get comfortable in saying it. I can learn the phrases, I can get the test right or memorize as many times as you like, but until I've actually had the process of trying to say it, seeing that I'm understood, or seeing that I'm not understood, and modifying how I say it, I won't really feel confident in that, and I won't also then be able to understand it when other people say it. And this is where I think AI is giving us this incredible opportunity, because we can put you into any, actually we can do a whole load of things. On one level, we can put you into a role play situation. So we can set up an AI to pretend to be a cashier in a post office selling you stamps. And you can go in with a mission to send a first-class recorded delivery letter to the other side of the world. And all the things that would come up in that conversation will come up in the conversation. And whatever you say, it will respond to you in a kind of rich way. And so that's level one. I can come back to that a little bit, but that's level one. But then there's also the receptive understanding. So just as I won't really have the ability to express myself in a language until I've practiced doing it, I also won't really have the ability to understand a language or any language that's being used until I've practiced doing that. And this is very much on the Stephen Krashen level. So how AI can help with that, and how we do this on Memrise, is that we go out to the internet and look all across YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. We can draw in videos and analyze them so that we've got tens, hundreds of thousands of word lists on Memrise generated from videos. So because we know all the words and phrases that are in there, we can then match them for whatever level that you have reached in learning words and phrases. We can find videos that match that level, and can then show you videos that are just above your current level, and therefore practice using the language that you have learned, and practice developing your understanding, your ability to understand. And so that's a kind of another way that AI can do that. The piece where I think is also kind of unintuitive, but I'm excited to explore more, and I'm not quite sure where it can go, is I have this idea that the generalized thing that that happens when you're learning, or learning happens most importantly when you're slightly confused. If you understand something so well that you're not confused, then you're not really learning. And if you're when you go beyond confusion, you get to just total, I don't understand what is going on. I'm not even confused. I'm just not even listening. And so we have to work in this area of slight confusion and discomfort. And I think that actually this is where AI gives us a step change, because it can respond to different ways of, and different levels of, I don't quite get what's going on. Can you explain to me? And actually Michael Lewis, who wrote a book called The Lexical Approach back in the 90s, had a great approach to teaching grammar, that he said that all grammar explanations should be partial, personal, and provisional. And what he meant by that was you could seek to explain the whole of a grammar construct to a student in one go and expect them to be able to apply it in every different situation. You should just explain how it's relevant right here. And so, for example, what we can do, what AI lets us do, is say, are you confused about why that phrase means what we're saying it means? And if you're not confused, fine. But if you are a bit confused and you're like, why is the end of that word changing? You can ask, answer in a responsive way. And how I'm summarizing that is that AI is good. It responds well to us being confused. And by helping us navigate moments where students are confused, that is a kind of learning superpower in itself. And it is just how we deal with, it's not so much the moment of imparting information, it's not access to information, it's how we can respond to people being confused at different levels. And that is, in a way, the most important thing about AI is that we can say, I'm confused about that, and it can modify how it explains it. So that's something that we're really diving into exploring. I'm just going to take a pause and see if there are any questions in the chat, but I'm also conscious I'm probably close to time, aren't I, Alex?
Yeah, it's no problem, but I think you are close to time, and we're definitely going to have more time at the end to be able to ask more, answer more questions. I don't think there's anything that is urgent to now, but if you can see
Sweet.
anything, go for it.
I'll type in the chat, but I think that's all good for now.
Let's put the questions in the chat, because then it'll give you a bit of time to digest and pass that on. But look, Ben, that was fantastic. What I really liked about that was you kind of spoke about a couple of game changers with AI. One being particularly about this idea of being able to be taught just above your current level and that kind of level of challenge, and also how you talked about almost how AI can help us get through these points of confusion and challenge in order to continue moving forward. So that was fantastic, and I really appreciate you putting that together. Demitro, we're going to ask you to have your conversation next. You should be able to share your screen if you have any slides, and otherwise I'll leave it over to you.
Slides just to illustrate some of the things that we did in relation to AI, but I cannot share my screen.
Okay, let me try this again.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
I'll just make you host, and if you can make me host.
That would be a privilege for me.
There we are. Demitro, our fantastic host today. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Co-host here. So I just want to share a few of the things that we did in relation to AI in Whately. And I'm one of the co-founders and chief technology officer in Whately. So it would be basically first-hand experience on how a pretty mature company adopts AI, which is an amazing new technology, amazing big wave, but also has its own strong and weak sides, as Ben also mentioned. So just a few words about Whately. So Whately historically is a marketplace where students from different countries can find the best language tutors for them and study with them online. And we are one of the biggest players. We have students from 180 countries, more than 40,000 of tutors working and earning with us each month. So we are one of the biggest marketplaces where you can find language tutors. And we were basically able always to write that wave of education going from offline to online. So basically people became much more open to study online. Perhaps 10 years ago, technology enabled that because we now have very good video conference. And so basically we started as a marketplace, but then we started building a lot of tooling to facilitate the learning process between student and a tutor. And obviously the simplest tool, not the simplest, but like the most obvious tool you build first is a video platform. But then what do you do next? How do you also help tutors and students to schedule lessons, to process payments, and so on? So basically that's what Whately does. We are like a marketplace, but also a platform where students and tutors have their lessons. And when this new AI wave emerged, we were thinking a lot about how should we basically help our users, our tutors and students to utilize it in the most efficient way for them. And we strongly believe that AI will enhance teaching and learning, but it will not replace human component. Perhaps in the very far foreseeable future, like decades from now, but perhaps even forever, because there is something very magical that happens between humans when they learn from other humans. So our vision was always, let's build tooling with the help of AI to help tutors to teach best and students to learn best. But we still maintain that human connection between people who are learning and teaching each other. And our AI thinking is that value is in distribution, use cases, and proprietary information which company have. And here is like a simple example. ChatGPT, which is like a tool that we all know, it was available through API to different companies 1 year before it got a user interface. So you still, as a company, could use technology from OpenAI, but nobody was excited about it until we saw, hey, now we can have this amazing UI interface of a chat where we can ask all of the questions, and it became like the technology of the year. So basically, use cases are super important, and the quality of that UI and UX. Then we also noted that distribution is very important. So companies which benefit from AI the most are companies which have a massive distribution to their user base. Good example here could be Adobe Photoshop. For example, they have like millions of users, and if that big company adds some new feature which is AI powered, they immediately get a very good adoption of it if the quality is good, because they don't need to do marketing. It is much harder for a small company to launch AI feature because you always compete with somebody who has more data. So it's also one of the important factors to keep in mind. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we prioritized high distribution use cases and thought about integration strategy, did a bit of a research. And what we found out is that our users, both tutors and students, they don't know how to use AI. They are scared about the word AI, and they basically worked with ChatGPT a little bit, but they don't find it very useful for their job, especially teachers. So the first feature that we built was so-called teaching assistant. And here you can see video. So basically, as a tutor, I can select a level of the student I am like having lessons with. I can select topics that we want to discuss, and I can automatically generate different type of exercises. And in this example, for example, it is a multiple choice, and this exercise basically is generated as text. So basically, we built a UI and UX interface that uses very simple prompts to call OpenAI, but we added much better UI and UX for teachers and a lot of hints to them how they can use it in their daily work to be more efficient. So generally, the technology on the background is the same, OpenAI, but the use case now is that we helped tutors to work with it by just clicking buttons instead of writing different complicated prompts. And this feature got like an amazing feedback from our community. You can see like here feedback from tutors. I used it yesterday and I had a blast with it. Both I and the student enjoyed it. Thank you. And for them, it works like a magic. For us, it is simple technology, but for them, it looks like magic. I mean, for our tutors. So one of the big learnings from this teaching assistant from us was that people have different understanding of the technology. And we, as a leader in online language learning marketplaces, should educate our user base, both tutors and students, on how AI can benefit them. Because the biggest benefit of AI for tutors right now, you can see it from this example, is that they just can optimize a lot of their routine tasks. They don't need to prepare homeworks. They don't need to copy paste data from PDFs if they want to give students some multiple choice exercise. So for them, it saves their time, perhaps like 3-5 minutes per lesson, but it's a lot. If you add it cumulatively, it's just like that 3-5 minutes that you really don't like, because it's like the most boring part of your job. And as I said before, the biggest learning from this feature for us was tutors don't know how to use it. So when you say, hey, we launched some AI feature, they are like, AI sounds scary. When you say, hey, we launched teaching assistant to you that will help you to prepare like homeworks and exercises for your students, now they're excited. But still, we needed to do a lot of footwork to basically invite our tutors to the webinars and educate them how this feature can help in their very specific use cases. So this is one interesting story about AI that I wanted to tell, and now is a different one. So basically, what else we can do? What can we do better? And what else is very like boring during the online lessons? One of the things that we identified through research is that tutors and students, they want to have a systematic approach. They want to have a follow-ups after the lessons, but everybody is so lazy about writing summaries and like summarizing which words were learned on the lesson and so on. So very obvious idea would be, hey, can we try to record these lessons and then basically provide a summary and new vocabulary automatically after the lesson ends. And here's a really interesting use case that we were able to build is that we built a feature called Lesson Insights that basically after each lesson, you'll see it on the screen, we'll analyze who talked on the lesson and what was discussed, what was the feedback that the tutor gave, and we then share it with a student and a tutor. And when we launched it, we also found like another interesting insight here that people, first of all, care about their data, and that's a very important thing. So we had a very difficult task to make sure that we provide enough value after the lesson with this feature for tutor and the student not to be afraid to be recorded. And there are some tricks that you can do. For example, when you say, I'll record your lesson, everybody is scared that, hey, we'll record a video of you. And like video is very sensitive. But in the real world, to make this AI feature work, you don't even need a video, you just need an audio to analyze it, transcribe it to text, and then like extract summary and vocabulary. And so we did a lot of iterations on understanding what is the right way to ask people, hey, can we record you and then not store it? We will not use it. We will not store it forever. We will not use it in any shady use cases, but can we record it and provide immediate value to you after the lesson? And this feature also like was a big success in Preply. And here we see a pattern this both of these features both have, that basically AI features work if they provide value. And it may sound very obvious, but it's how it is. You don't need to make some amazing magic. You just need to build something that helps people to save time and avoid doing some jobs that they don't want to do. And if you're thinking even farther on a more technical level, a lot of people are thinking, oh, to build AI features or to work with AI, I need to be an expert, train models, blah, blah, blah. In real life, most of the things that companies can do is just like to use existing technology, but provide it in a much better UX and UI. So like our first features were just like wrappers around OpenAI, and we became experts in prompt engineering, not in machine learning, but we were like having our methodology team to learn how to prompt OpenAI to help tutors to have the best prompts when they're using our features. And these prompts are not even visible to them. They're just like hidden after the buttons. So when I'm thinking about our journey with generative AI at Preply, quality is the key thing. So basically, there is that concept of playful experiences in AI, that AI still provides you non-deterministic answers. So it can hallucinate, it can contain errors. And the important thing is that you don't pretend that it's always know everything, but you use what it does the best, like text summarization, like voice transcription, or like exercise generation, to optimize some of the most routine tasks for language learning. 80% of initial value can be generated even without engineers. So our methodology team became prompt experts. And it's not hard to become a prompt expert. It's a new domain. You just learn how this new amazing technology works. But now, as our methodology team knows how it works, they can simplify and explain to our tutors community how they can use it in their daily work. Perception of AI among potential users is a key insight for adoption. People are scared when they hear AI, and even the term AI, it's like it's not scientifically well-defined term, because like you also have machine learning, you have AI, and so on. So you need to explain it in like much simpler language to different parties of like what you actually do, why AI is used, what is the real value behind it. And also we see that we overestimate the short-term impact to the efficiency boost, but long-term probably it will be just a new normal for everybody to use AI and have AI features in different products that we use in our daily life. So there is a lot of hype about AI. We need to understand that humans' behavior changes much slower than we would expect, but it is slow but consistent change. So nothing will change in language learning in a month or in a quarter. Something will be very different in a year, But in 20 years, the way how we learn languages and how we teach languages will be completely different. And that's it. I'm happy to hear the questions after all of us speak, and we'll try to answer them.
Great. If you can make me host again, please, Demitro, that would be great. But in the meantime, just to wrap that up, I thought that was fantastic, Demitro. What I really liked about what you're talking about was this idea of software and technology kind of feeling like magic when you don't have to think about it. And also this idea of wrapping great technology into really intuitive experiences. And sometimes it's more about creating a great experience than worrying so much about the technology. So there are a number of points I took away from your talk, Demitro, so thank you very much. I'm going to be next sharing some insights from a research that I've been doing over the last 2 months. I'm just going to share my screen as well. So one of the things that I've been busy behind the scenes and certainly leading up to this summit was taking and making a bunch of interviews with language leaders from across the world. We got through a couple of dozen, and so I was really pleased with the variety of different leaders that we're able to talk to. And Brian and I are not only going to be presenting some of the research today, but also we're going to be alluding to the white paper that we're also going to be passing on to all of you folks that are here and listening into the recording as well in due course. But just to give a little bit of an intro about myself, so I'm the CEO of LearnCube. We specialize in a virtual classroom made for language teaching, and I'm also the host of the Language Leaders podcast and the co-author of LangTech, the book that I was referring to with my co-author, Brian. Brian, do you want to tell them just a little bit more about yourself, and particularly your passion and interest around how technology is impacting language education?
Well, as Alex mentioned, my name is Brian. I'm the director of product at Evo Academy, and I hold a Master of Education degree from Harvard with concentration in technology, innovation, and education. To answer your question about why I'm so interested in technology and in LangTech in general, and in AI particularly at the moment, how can you not be? It's a very interesting time. I guess that one of the main dilemmas that we educators have been facing in the past few decades is that technology has changed so much in our daily lives. Like Ben said before, the scale of the information that we have access to is unprecedented. That said, instructional methodologies have remained more or less the same. And a very basic concept in educational technology is that when simply incorporating technology into the same old instructional methodologies doesn't really produce profound change. You need to think about the pedagogical change first and then leverage technology to create that change. But the end goal is always ultimately instructional or pedagogical. It's not technological. So with AI, it finally seems like there's light at the end of the tunnel that, like Demitro said, not immediately, but eventually, slowly, maybe in a few years, in a few decades, we will finally be able to achieve those instructional models at scale that we dreamed of just a few years ago. They were just a dream. So we know what the instructional model should look like, and AI seems to finally have the potential to let us achieve that at scale. So that's why it's we're going to talk more about our findings in the white paper, but the times that we're living in are very, very interesting, and AI is going to be definitely a game changer.
Totally agree. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the research that we did in preparation for this. So we talked to a couple of dozen language leaders. As you can kind of see, they really did sort of split between B2B and B2C. So we do have that breadth. They were also from lots of different countries, from the US, Korea, India, lots of places in the UK and in Europe as well. So I'm looking forward to sharing those results with you. And I guess the kind of key premise was, is generative AI changing something in language education? If so, what does that look like? So one of the first questions I want to ask was really, how people are responding to changes in opportunity with generative AI. And we really did see, half not really just sort of waiting on the side, and the other half having already delivered something, and then the people in the middle being those that have something in the wings. And so I think we're going to see more and more releases of AI-powered tools over the year ahead for sure. The interesting thing was also just kind of asking about what kinds of problems people are hoping to use AI to solve. And there were, lots of different things that I could talk about, but clearly one of the there were kind of two key areas. One was this idea of conversation practice that people are very, interested in. So that could be, particularly since we've now got this multimodal opportunities, people using voice and sometimes video to be able to interact with AI language tutors. So this conversation practice seems something a lot more achievable, but also content creation. So this probably doesn't surprise most, but it might surprise you just how significant these two kind of sections were in terms of what people thought about it. Content creation and personalizing content was something that was massive. And I know that this is something near and dear to our hearts as well, Brian. We really believe in this vision of personal learning and personal teaching where you can involve the learner far more in the learning journey and really ask them about what kinds of information, content, and resources are going to be most relevant for them. So that I think is very exciting. The other components could be things from AI and pronunciation and just providing feedback, even Memrise's examples as well, using AI to generate all sorts of new, rich learning opportunities. So there's a lot there. But one thing that was also curious were the perceptions. And I was really interested in learning how people's perceptions were evolving. And of course, in language education, we have a number of different stakeholders, from our learners to our teachers, sometimes to companies that are hired by language companies, of course, the language companies themselves. But to start off with learners, quite honestly, not many of the language leaders that I spoke to mentioned that AI was a really hot topic for those learners. And I think it goes back to maybe what Demitro was saying, it's probably not AI or technology that people are excited about. It's going to be more about, does it add value? And if they're interested in that value, then they might be interested in whatever that AI enables. Interestingly, on the teacher side, and maybe you want to speak a bit more to this, Brian, as well, but I actually thought that one of the best places for us to go to for information about how teachers are feeling was there's a fairly recent study from British Council on artificial intelligence and English language learning. Definitely recommend you look at it, particularly because it provides some really interesting statistics. But you can see here on this slide that teachers are increasingly using AI. When I say AI, though, I would have to say, and I've spoken at conferences like English UK, people are associating AI with ChatGPT, almost like they're the same thing. And I think that is something that we need to get a bit more nuanced about. But also, it's not unfair in the fact that also almost universally, the people that I spoke to, the language leaders that I spoke to, were also using OpenAI as either the APIs that they're using to fuel their AI solutions, or in fact the thing they're using for content generation and that kind of thing. Brian, was there anything here that you found curious?
Well, it's interesting. Like Demitro talked about habits, about learning habits, and about teaching habits, and it's true. Teaching habits are really slow to change, and they're hard to break. But you don't really need to break them. You just need to enhance them or optimize them or just make the teacher's work easier and better. So I think that from the teacher's perspective, even though adoption has been slow, they are really sort of beginning to unlock a whole new toolbox. And basically, yes, I think that I think you mentioned this as well, that one of the coolest things that we're seeing with teachers using AI is that how they're using it to hyper-personalize the content. So I think Ben mentioned before, like he gave an example about how you can hyper-personalize the learning experience from a methodological perspective. You can also hyper-personalize it from a content perspective. Like you get before you would be stuck with a text that you would be given. Now you can simply hyper-personalize that text to that students' level, needs, or interests. So that's all very interesting, and in a way, it sort of like empowers the teacher. So we're probably going to talk a little more about this later. That we don't think that that AI is going to fully replace human teachers, but it's definitely going to enhance their teaching, and it's going to make them into super teachers, you could say.
Totally right. And just to kind of tap into that, we're kind of hearing sort of themes in it, and certainly when I was talking with other language leaders, we're not seeing, you know, a dramatic change in the demand of almost any service, which is both encouraging and curious. And I think that's also because we're probably at the very start of that, and maybe we shouldn't have expectations that something should change. But certainly from the results from talking with language leaders, we're not seeing any kind of major changes, whether it be in lower income countries or higher income countries. Doesn't mean that it's not moving, but I think maybe we all are seeing that, you know, language learning, language teaching, and language habits in general are probably maybe the one thing that is going to be the slowest to change. Not necessarily how quickly and how useful the technology is, but how quickly we get that adoption.
I think we, the product developers, just haven't done our job yet. I think that the potential for step change is enormous, and I think it will happen. And I think that if you think the limiting factor in learning English for most people around the world is access to native speakers that they can practice with, that they can be confused with and have their confusion headed off, and that they can want to understand and want to make themselves understood by. And for most of the world, it's hard to access those English speakers, except now it isn't. We can give you most of that experience. But I think what Demitro said, there's something ineffable about the relationship and what happens when two humans meet. And I suspect, though, that the appointment dynamic of an actual human being there is probably where we see the rubber hit the road on that one. That's like the crucial thing, is it's the best retention mechanism, is having an actual human there saying, hey, now's your moment, turn up. But I think that that's going to become less and less of an issue. I think that the requirement for that to be a teacher becomes lower and lower. And it is just their humanness, not their skill as a teacher, that becomes it. So I do think that we will see a dramatic change. It doesn't surprise me that teachers, it's a bit turkeys voting for Christmas to expect teachers to drive that change. I think that is the existing market, so it makes sense to be trying to work from there. But I think we will see a very dramatic change in the way people learn languages.
I'm really looking forward to it, and I think we'll kind of wait for it. We'll check out the evidence as well. Ben, what was really interesting was this is mainly from language leaders themselves, and so this is also language leaders making these decisions. There's certainly no shortage of people trying, but I think your initial point there, Ben, might be the point, which is we haven't quite nailed it yet. What's very interesting as well is very few language leaders were willing or able or felt confident enough to charge more for either a better service or more personalized service in AI anything. With one big exception, I would actually say Memrise is actually doing extremely well from this and improving its actual business performance as well. But we did see
we're not charging more. We're not charging more for it though. Actually, Duolingo are charging more for the AI.
I won't dispute. All I'm saying is from talking with Steve, it sounded like the average order value for Memrise has increased over time because of what you're doing, and in a way it sounded like a very positive thing.
But we're not explicitly charging for the AI. It's just that we haven't put the AI behind the paywall, but people are getting more value, and therefore more people are paying more.
Well, that's a great example then as well. So I kind of got into what were some of the kind of blockers stopping adoption. Most people, there were no kind of like obvious things, except for, you know, people are thinking about regulations, privacy, and those sorts of things, but there's nothing really that stood out from the research. Absolutely universal was that despite people from varying kind of technological backgrounds being very optimistic about AI's role in education, humans still seem to be a very critical part of that. There's something about that motivation, that accountability, that seems very fundamental to the way that we learn. And I think there's also this real difference between, let's call them serious learners and recreational or non-serious learners as well. And they often, the more serious learners, they kind of want to access that different toolkit, which might come in human form, which, to be fair, I think many of us will be relieved by. But it'll be interesting to watch the future play out. But Brian, I'll let you introduce our white paper, which we're also going to be sending out to all of you very shortly.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of you might be familiar with the book that Alex and I published last year, which is called LangTech, a deep dive into online language education. And basically, we published a book in early 2023. So of course we had knowledge, and we discussed the generative AI and the release of ChatGPT in November 2022. However, we wanted to see what was going on 14 months on. So a little over a year later, has anything really changed in how people are learning languages with AI? And that is what the research and ultimately the white paper is about. So you're all going to get this white paper eventually, so I'm not going to spoil it for you.
We're hoping to answer a lot of your questions as well through the white paper, and by bringing this research and our information together, including answering some very interesting questions about, particularly that question, are AI tutors going to start having a bigger impact on human language teachers? But before you go on my side as well, I just wanted to introduce you to our AI teacher assistant. This is something that we provide as part of our virtual classroom. And it's really part of our approach and how we are wanting to make that available to all language companies, this idea of being able to empower the teacher, allow them to really personalize the class and really attend and respond to the students. So I look forward to talking to you more about that, and you can just use that little link there, and I'll put it in the chat as well if you'd like to book a time with me. But I'm basically leading up though to our Q&A. So while you're listening, and I hope that you're putting a couple of questions in our Q&A, because there's a lot to unpack. But from both Brian and I, thank you very much for listening in, and we're definitely going to be excited to hear your feedback on the white paper too. So with that, let's open up some of the questions that we have in the tin. I think this might be best for you, Demitro, just starting off with regarding AI generated exercises and explanations. How do you tailor prompts to avoid incorrect information being delivered? And maybe you alluded to that might not be the expectation.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it was visible on the presentation, but we use so-called human in the loop model. So basically, we provide these exercises to tutors, but we never send it directly to students after it is generated, because we always ask tutors to check if everything there is correctly. So basically, you save your time as a tutor, you don't generate this exercise, but it's your responsibility to make sure that AI did a really good job. And like in 99%, it did. But we also don't want to have that 1% of errors really like disrupting trust in the technology. So the way we solve it, we still have tutors to double check everything that is generated for them before sending it to students.
Yeah, I'd like to back that up as well, Demitro. I think one of the things we noted with the assistant is you have to make it editable and modifiable before the tutor publishes it for the student. I think it makes the tutor feel a lot more comfortable about the technology, and obviously the results just are a lot better. Ben, one thing from you, you're definitely probably one of the first to release the Membot. How do you kind of feel about this sort of sense of when's good enough? Like, when do you ship? And particularly the fact that you were so early on.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny being so early on, because when we released, I mean, actually the whole journey was quite interesting, because when we started working on a conversational AI, it was just after GPT-3 was launched. And we started off, we got the whole tech team working on it. We were like, this is a breakthrough. We need to do something with this. And they spent about 6 weeks looking at it and came back and said, nah, can't really do anything with that. And for a whole load of like almost okay reasons, like the prompt engineering wasn't great at that point. Or it's hard. You had to do a lot of prompt engineering to make things work. There was worries about safety and how it would sometimes be offensive and things like that. But fundamentally, I think it was a point of it being such a different paradigm that people can imagine product around it because it was just so different to what they were expecting. Then when we released the first version, it was funny seeing users' responses to it, that they didn't expect, that they actually didn't talk to it in an open way because they assumed that it was a very limited conversation tree and that it would only be able to answer certain things. And that mental model was so strong that people just weren't using it. And once ChatGPT came out, suddenly people came back and were going, oh, well, I know what this is. This is an AI. And then they were suddenly using it. But it was kind of bizarre for us because we tried all this onboarding of saying, you can ask it anything, try. And still people are like, no, I can't. I won't be able to ask it anything. It won't be able to translate what I say. It's like, no, it can. It can do it all. And just seeing that switch in people's expectations of what is possible from AI. And I think now you kind of see that where people have a mental model of AI being, is it accurate? Does it say the right thing? And it's like, well, no, it won't always be accurate if you just ask it a question. No. But if you structure the prompt in the right way, you can get pretty damn sure it's accurate, or at least get it to say that it's not accurate if it doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not just a question of the right way to prompt engineer it. And when people say, oh yeah, but the AI it hallucinates and it can be wrong, it's kind of like saying, can you ask a random human a question and rely on the answer? Like, no, of course you can't. It's just a ridiculous thing to try and do.
Yeah.
And the AI is actually a hell of a lot better than asking a random human. And if you ask it in the right way, you can be really confident of the answer because you can tell it that if you're not 100% sure, don't give me an answer at all. And you can get very good on that. At the moment, that requires quite a lot of prompt engineering. But I think relatively soon, the base models are going to get better, and all the effort that Demitro and I have gone into getting really good at prompt engineering will be completely wasted because the base models will be able to do it, which is already definitely happening. But I've forgotten your question, and I definitely didn't answer it. But I hope that's interesting.
That's all right. You didn't answer. You definitely didn't answer. Give me a ChatGPT response. I appreciate that, Ben. We know you're human.
ChatGPT would be much more accurate at all points.
Hey, one thing I've just got here for you, Demitro, was you're operating such scale with your tutors. How did you kind of get them over this problem of sort of, how did you minimize those fears? Like, is it about communication? Is there kind of certain wording or language that you find that was really important, or even kind of a strategies and approaches? Did you need to bring tutors very much involved in the process, or could you just say, hey, look, this is what we've done, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we have kind of three tracks. The first one, and perhaps the most impactful, is that we have our tutors community.
Yeah.
And basically it's a place where tutors talk with each other. And as a company, it's really hard to convince your tutors, hey, this is a bad thing that will happen in your life. As a teacher, it'll save you 5 minutes per day. But if you hear it from other fellow tutor, you are kind of, yeah, I should try it. This person does the same work as I do. So there is much more trust. And that's why having tutors community really helps. Yeah. Secondly, we have our methodology team, which, the experts now in this, and they do regular webinars and basically education for our tutors. And it's just like a matter of time. So like it just takes time every month, and tutors go through AI-powered tutors and Preply training. Yeah. The third thing is that these tools are embedded into the workflow of our teachers. So basically, you see that shiny button there, hey, generate exercise for a student. And sometimes they just click, see how it works, and
yeah. Hey, well answered. Thanks very much. My last question actually for you, Brian, would be, and actually this is really relating to the book that we did, and you've got this fantastic educational background, and when we thought about it, AI sort of really seems to tick the box of our main kind of framework. That's, is it helping the product be more personal, practical, profitable, and scalable? What is your take on theory versus practice when it comes to AI-powered tools and opportunities?
Well, it definitely has the potential to be true, but the education field, including, of course, online language education, is one of the slowest fields to change ever in terms of technology and to technology adoption. I think that the main reason for that is that learning habits are extremely hard to change. So there is going to be progress. It's going to be extremely slow. And as I was saying before, technology per se, just simply incorporating technology, it won't really do anything from an instructional perspective. So if you really want instructional change, you want to think of what instructional model, what pedagogical model do I want to have? What is ideal? What is the best way of learning? And then how can I get to that using this new technology? If you start thinking with the technology first in mind, it's never going to produce change.
Well answered. Thanks very much. I think the last question I noticed in the chat was more around what role traditional publishers might play.
I think, well, one thing that we have to consider about AI is that AI democratizes really quickly, which means that it also demonetizes really quickly. So you have to be very careful. And I think traditional publishers are going to be very mindful of this, is that, well, with generative AI, they run the risk of their product being a commodity, and content generation will just be a commodity. So they really need to start thinking of how to incorporate these new technologies to make their products still relevant and distinctive.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all the time that we have today. I want to really thank all the guests, Brian Kantt, of course, Ben Watley, and Demitro. Please, I know that we're seeing it on the chat as well. Everyone has been so thankful for your time and your generosity with your presentations. So thanks for sharing, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, everyone.